Tucked behind the neon-drenched alleys of Osaka, there's a place few tourists will ever see. Locals call it the town that doesn't exist. No signboards, no official address, just winding back streets, tarpaulin roofs, and the quiet shuffle of men in their 70s collecting cans at dawn. In Kamagasaki, once a booming day labor hub, time seems frozen but not in a nostalgic way. Here monks chant next to vending machines. A barber still sharpens razors on whetstones handed down 3 generations. And every week volunteers gather in silence to clean the bodies of those who died alone, undiscovered for days. It's Japan, but not the one on postcards, not the bullet trains, not the cherry blossoms. This is the other side of perfection, where the forgotten live and sometimes choose to disappear. Welcome to the invisible Japan. Number 1. Japan's hidden side. When most people think of Japan, they picture a postcard. Bullet trains gliding through the countryside, cherry blossoms fluttering like soft pink snow, towering skyscrapers in Tokyo glowing like galaxies, shrines standing quietly amidst the chaos, preserving a culture both ancient and precise. And for good reason, Japan is a marvel, a place where tradition meets tomorrow. It's known for being one of the cleanest, safest, and most organized countries on Earth. A land where trains are famously late if they miss the mark by 20 seconds. Where school children sweep their classrooms before going home. Where vending machines can sell you anything from hot coffee to umbrellas and rarely ever break down. But here's what that polished image doesn't show you. Not far from those neon-lit intersections behind alleys too narrow for tour buses lies a side of Japan that's rarely spoken about. A side that doesn't sparkle. In a country of over 124 million people, there are entire communities that seem to vanish from maps and from memory. Let's talk about the people living in the shadows. Start with the elderly. More than 29% of Japan's population is now over 65 years old. That's nearly 1 in every 3 people. Many of them live alone, some by choice, others because they've been quietly forgotten. In cities like Tokyo and Osaka, thousands of seniors spend their final days in silence, their bodies only discovered after the neighbors notice a strange smell or an unpaid utility bill. And then there's the youth. Not the ones filling Harajuku with fashion or dominating esports tournaments, but those who've retreated from society entirely. They're called Hikikomori, a word that literally means pulling inward. Over 1,500,000 young people in Japan have locked themselves away, some for months, others for decades. No school, no work, no friends, just isolation. In a country where conformity is king, they have quietly disappeared behind closed doors. But there's another group harder to count, harder to find. The invisible homeless. Japan doesn't have sprawling tent cities like the United States. You won't see people sleeping on sidewalks with cardboard signs asking for change. Here, homelessness hides in plain sight. Thousands of people survive by renting tiny booths in internet cafes or manga cafes, paying by the hour or the night. They're called the net cafe refugees. They work unstable, low-paying jobs if they work at all and live on the edge of eviction, one missed paycheck away from the streets. And what about the slums? Places like Kamagasaki in Osaka or Sanya in Tokyo were once bustling labor districts. Today, they're almost erased from official maps, rebranded, renamed, or redeveloped to forget the past, but they still exist. Low-income men, mostly elderly, live in cramped, decaying buildings, earning their meals through odd jobs or surviving on modest welfare payments. These places aren't tourist attractions, they're hidden realities. Japan is a country of deep contrasts. It is beautiful, brilliant, and bound by ritual. But behind the beauty lies a quiet crisis. one not defined by earthquakes or tsunamis, but by loneliness, economic stagnation, and cultural silence. It's a nation that seems to have mastered everything, except how to care for the people it leaves behind. So before we dive deeper, ask yourself, what happens when a country becomes so focused on perfection that it forgets the imperfect among them? Number 2. Japan's birth rate crisis. In the year 2023, Japan recorded just around 758,000 births. That's the lowest number in its recorded history. To put it simply, for every baby born, almost 2 people passed away. And now in 2025, the numbers haven't improved. Experts project that this year births may drop even further, closer to 700,000, while deaths continue to rise past 1,400,000. That's not a decline, that's a free fall. But this isn't just about numbers, this is about why. So what's really going on? Yes, the economy plays a role. Living in cities like Tokyo or Osaka is expensive. Raising a child in Japan can cost over $200,000 from diapers to college tuition, but the deeper reasons run much colder. There's the relentless work culture, the idea that overtime is noble, that exhaustion is a badge of honor, that dating, marrying, and having children are luxuries, not priorities. And then there's the loneliness. Japan is a place where politeness often replaces emotional connection, where millions of people feel isolated even in the middle of a crowd. It's led to a growing wave of non-marriage by choice. Young people, especially in their 20s and 30s, are choosing to stay single. Some simply can't afford marriage, others don't believe in it anymore. Many retreat into virtual worlds, online communities, and digital identities, finding comfort behind screens instead of in each other's arms. This modern solitude has a name: Soshoku Danshi, the herbivore men who avoid romance, marriage, even ambition. It's not that they're lazy, it's that they're tired of a system that asks too much and gives too little back. And as the youth steps back, the country grows quiet. So what happens when a population shrinks? Entire towns, especially in rural Japan, are turning into ghost villages. Houses sit empty, grass swallows playgrounds, schools are closing, not from budget cuts, but from a complete lack of students. In the town of Nagoro in Tokushima Prefecture, residents placed life-sized dolls in empty seats, classrooms, and bus stops, each one representing someone who once lived there. It's eerie, it's beautiful, it's heartbreaking. Even cities aren't immune. Toy stores are going out of business. Child care centers are merging or shutting down. Apartment complexes in once bustling neighborhoods now offer discounts just to fill the silence. And nature doesn't wait. In the absence of people, wild boars and monkeys are returning to suburban edges, reclaiming the land. This isn't science fiction. This is happening right now. The Japanese government knows it. They've poured money into fertility campaigns, expanded parental leave, and tried to incentivize dating. But culture is slow to change. And for many, it feels too late. Because how do you reverse a trend that's been building for decades? How do you ask a generation that's been taught to survive alone to suddenly build a family? Japan's population crisis is not loud. There are no protests, no breaking news alerts, just quiet goodbyes, empty cradles, and towns that vanish, one household at a time. It's a reminder that even in the most advanced societies, even in places of beauty, order, and tradition, a nation can disappear. Not from war or disaster, but from forgetting how to begin again. Number 3. Aging population overload. Japan is getting older. Fast, not just a little older, but historically record-breakingly old. Right now, in 2025, nearly 1 out of every 3 people in Japan is over the age of 65. That's not a metaphor, that's reality. By the year 2050, that number is expected to climb to nearly 40%. Imagine 4 out of every 10 people needing senior care pensions or medical support all at once. This isn't just a demographic trend, it's a social earthquake, and the tremors are already being felt. Let's start with something most people outside Japan have never heard of: kodokushi. It means lonely death. Every year, thousands of elderly men and women in Japan die alone in their homes, unnoticed, unmissed, and undiscovered for days or even weeks. In Tokyo alone, over 4,000 cases were reported last year. Think about that. A city with some of the best healthcare, longest life expectancy, and lowest crime rates yet, thousands die in silence. Why? Well, Japan's culture deeply values independence. Asking for help is often seen as shameful, and in a society where family structures have thinned and neighbors barely talk, many older adults simply fade into the background, until one day no one hears from them again. It's not just heartbreaking, it's telling, and it connects to the bigger problem, a social support system stretched to its breaking point. Pensions. The average monthly government pension in Japan is just under $1,200, but living in cities like Tokyo or Yokohama often requires twice that to survive comfortably. That means many elderly are being forced to choose between medication and food. And what about elder care? Japan does have care homes and in-home support services, but here's the catch. There aren't enough of them. Nursing facilities are full. Waiting lists stretch for months, sometimes years. Staff shortages are so severe that some homes now import caregivers from overseas just to keep the lights on. And then there's the family. Traditionally, adult children cared for their aging parents. But in modern Japan, many can't afford to. They're working long hours, raising kids of their own, or living far away in cramped urban apartments. Some want to help, but they simply can't. This generational gap has created what experts call the silver tsunami, a massive wave of aging individuals with no one to catch them. And the result? Hospitals overwhelmed with non-emergency visits. Ambulance services stretch thin public transport systems struggling to serve towns where walkers now outnumber bicycles. Even businesses are feeling it. More senior citizens are returning to work, not because they want to, but because they have to. You'll see them cleaning parks, greeting shoppers at supermarkets, sorting packages at warehouses, not retirees enjoying their golden years, but elders surviving paycheck to paycheck. And that's the paradox. Japan is one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth, a place of robots, automation, and futuristic skylines. Yet in the very same country, thousands of elders live in poverty, die in solitude, and slip through the cracks of a system that once promised to protect them. So the question becomes, how do we measure progress by how fast our trains are, or how well we care for those who can no longer walk alone? Because when the elderly are forgotten, it's not just a reflection of age, it's a reflection of our humanity. Number 4, elderly crime and prison life. Behind bars for a warm meal when prison becomes home. It sounds like the beginning of a dark comedy, but it's not. In Japan, a growing number of elderly citizens are committing crimes not out of malice, not out of greed, but because they're desperate for food, for shelter, for someone to talk to. Over the past 20 years, Japan has seen a surge in crimes committed by people over the age of 65. Back in the early 2000s, older adults made up just a small portion of the prison population. But today, nearly 1 out of every 5 inmates in Japan is a senior citizen. That's 20%. And many of these crimes, they're not violent, they're not complicated. They're petty theft, stealing a rice ball, a sandwich, a pair of cheap reading glasses. And here's the twist. Many of them do it on purpose. Let that sink in. They break the law not to escape justice, but to escape loneliness. Because inside prison, they get 3 meals a day, a warm bed, regular health checkups, and perhaps most importantly, people who notice they exist. One man aged 78 admitted to stealing a bicycle so he could return to jail. He said, "At least in prison, someone asks how I'm doing." In the outside world, he was invisible. In prison, he mattered. This isn't a crime wave, it's a cry for help. And the system, it's struggling to keep up. Prisons across Japan have had to completely restructure their operations to accommodate the silver inmates. They're hiring more nurses than guards, installing grab bars in cells, and offering rehabilitation programs for dementia and arthritis. One correctional officer in Fukuoka described his prison as a hybrid between a detention center and a nursing home. And that's not an exaggeration. Some facilities now serve low-sodium meals, provide daily medication routines, and even organize light exercise sessions to prevent muscle loss. But this shift comes at a cost. Housing an elderly inmate costs the government nearly twice as much as a younger one, up to $45,000 a year per person. Multiply that by tens of thousands, and it becomes a national burden. And yet for many of these men, it's still the best option. Why? Because on the outside, they're faced with rising rent, shrinking pensions, and a society that no longer sees them. Some are widowed, others estranged from their children. They live alone in tiny apartments, scraping by on government benefits that barely cover electricity. They don't want to be criminals, but the alternative is colder than a cell block, complete and total isolation. And so the paradox grows. A country known for its strict rules, its advanced technology, and its respect for elders has unintentionally created a world where prison feels safer than freedom. It raises a haunting question. What does it say about society when jail becomes the last refuge for the elderly? This isn't about crime. It's about dignity. About what happens when systems meant to protect the vulnerable start letting them slip through the cracks. And unless something changes, unless the safety net becomes stronger, more and more seniors may find themselves walking into a convenience store, not to shop, but to surrender. Not because they want to break the law, but because behind bars they finally feel seen. Number 5. Invisible homeless in Japan. When we think of homelessness, we often picture tents on sidewalks, people holding cardboard signs, overcrowded shelters and street corners lit by fire barrels. But in Japan, homelessness hides. You won't see sprawling tent cities. There's no shouting, no public panhandling, no signs that say anything helps. Yet poverty is there quiet, tucked away, almost invisible by design. In 2025, Japan has an estimated 300,000 people living in unstable or semi-permanent housing, but fewer than 4,000 are officially counted as homeless by government surveys. Why? Because so many people don't sleep on the streets, they sleep in internet cafes. They're known as net cafe refugees. Picture this, a small cubicle, just big enough to lie down, a desk, a chair, maybe a charging port, that's home for the night, for some. It's been home for months, even years. Most of these individuals are young men in their 20s and 30s. They work low-paying, part-time jobs, convenience stores, delivery manual labor. They earn just enough to survive, but never enough to climb out. Renting an apartment in Tokyo, even a tiny one-room space, often requires thousands of dollars up front, including key money deposit and agency fees. For many, it's impossible. So instead, they live by the hour. By night, they check into a 24-hour manga cafe. By day, they chase temporary work or wander. There's no legal address, no bed of their own, no future they can afford. But they're not counted as homeless, because they're not on the streets. They're in the cracks, and Japan's system isn't built to catch them. And it doesn't end there. Some of the country's most historically impoverished areas have been erased from the map, literally. Take Kamagasaki in Osaka, or Sanya in Tokyo. Once hubs for day laborers, these neighborhoods were known for cheap lodging, unemployment lines, and working-class grit. But in recent years, signs were removed. Official names changed, out of sight, out of mind. But the people never left. In Kamagasaki today, around 25,000 residents, mostly elderly men, still live in run-down communal housing, some paying just a few $100s a month. Many survive on daily wage jobs pushing carts, collecting recyclables, or relying on government welfare. They form a quiet community, a forgotten one. No neon lights, no cherry blossoms, just narrow streets, fading paint, and stories no one asked to hear. And perhaps that's the most haunting part. This isn't a place of chaos. It's not loud, it's not lawless, it's quiet, dangerously quiet. Because Japan is a society that values order, discipline, and dignity. Asking for help is often seen as weakness, so people suffer silently wearing clean shirts over empty stomachs. And in that silence, a dangerous myth takes hold, that poverty doesn't exist here, that everyone's doing fine. But look closer and you'll see another Japan, a Japan where working full-time doesn't mean you can afford a home, where youth hide in cafes, where slums aren't acknowledged, not because they've been lifted out of poverty, but because they've been renamed and ignored. So next time someone says Japan has no homeless problem, remember this. Just because you don't see the struggle doesn't mean it isn't there. Number 6. Work pressure and hikikomori. In Japan, hard work is a badge of honor. Sacrifice is tradition, perseverance is pride. But when taken too far, even virtues can become lethal. Every year, thousands of people in Japan die from overwork, a phenomenon so common it has a name, karoshi. It means death by overwork. And it's not just a metaphor. As of 2025, more than 2,000 reported deaths per year are linked to heart attacks, strokes, or suicide caused by extreme stress and exhaustion at work. These are not factory laborers. Many are white-collar workers, office staff, teachers, even junior executives. They fall asleep at their desks. They skip meals, ignore symptoms, and power through fatigue until their bodies give out. Why? Because the cultural pressure is immense. In Japan, taking a sick day is seen as selfish. Leaving before your boss is frowned upon. Working late is expected, even if you're done for the day. It's not about results, it's about endurance. And this pressure doesn't just wear down the body, it breaks the spirit too. Which brings us to another crisis. One that's quieter but just as devastating. Hikikomori. It translates to pulling inward, and it's being called Japan's missing generation. As of this year, over 1,500,000 people in Japan have completely withdrawn from society. They don't work, don't go to school, don't socialize. Some haven't left their rooms in months, others for decades. The majority are men between the ages of 20 and 40. Many once had jobs or were top students, but somewhere along the way, through failure, burnout, or bullying, they gave up. Or more accurately, they gave in to the silence, to the shame, to the feeling that they no longer belonged. Japan's society is built on rules, order, and roles. But if you fall outside those roles, if you're not a student, a worker, a spouse, there's little space for you. So, instead of facing judgment, they disappear into their rooms, into online games, late-night YouTube loops, and quiet meals alone. And here's where it gets even harder. Because many hikikomori live with aging parents, this has led to what's now known as the 80-50 problem. Picture it. An 80-year-old mother still taking care of her 50-year-old son who hasn't left the house in 30 years. No job, no insurance, no support system. What happens when the parents pass away? That question keeps thousands of families awake at night. There are efforts to help. Some nonprofits now hire rental sisters, trained social workers who visit hikikomori, slowly building trust. Others offer online therapy, job training, and re-entry programs. But recovery is slow, because the wound isn't just emotional, it's cultural. It's about a society where being vulnerable is taboo, where failure is a stain, where asking for help feels like giving up. And that needs to change, because behind every locked door is not just a person, but a life waiting to restart. So yes, Japan is a land of dedication, of excellence, of honor. But it's also a country where burnout is normalized and disappearance is quietly tolerated. And until rest, mental health and connection are valued as much as hard work, we'll keep losing more people. Not to war, not to poverty, but to silence. Number 7. Signs of hope and change. For everything Japan is facing, declining birth rates, an aging population, quiet poverty, social withdrawal, there's something else quietly taking root. Hope, not loud, not flashy, but real. In recent years, the Japanese government has begun to push back against the tide. In 2025, new policies now offer larger birth incentives up to $4,000 per child, plus expanded access to affordable childcare and parental leave. Some cities like Nagoya and Fukuoka are offering free housing to families with young children in depopulated areas, hoping to breathe life back into fading towns. Mental health, long treated as a private burden, is finally becoming a public conversation. More than 500 new counseling centers have opened nationwide in the last 3 years, providing support for youth parents and the elderly. But perhaps the most touching efforts are coming from the ground up. In a quiet corner of Tokyo, there's a café not just for coffee, but for companionship. Here, elderly locals gather to play board games, share memories, and simply be seen. Some come every day not for food, but for the feeling of still belonging. Elsewhere, abandoned school buildings, once symbols of a vanishing generation, are being reborn as community centers. Inside, you'll find shared kitchens, job retraining classes, and even Hikikomori outreach hubs designed to reintroduce isolation survivors back into society, one quiet hello at a time. And the culture itself, it's shifting. You can feel it. There's more space now for honesty, for young men to admit they're overwhelmed, for women to say they want careers and families on their own terms. There are TV dramas about loneliness, public campaigns encouraging people to check in on their neighbors, and yes, even government officials talking openly about failure, burnout, and mental health. In a society once defined by stoicism and perfection, vulnerability is becoming acceptable. And that matters, because in every country, not just Japan, there are people slipping through the cracks. People who are elderly but not cared for. People who are young but invisible. People who are surrounded by millions, but deeply, painfully alone. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that a truly advanced society isn't measured by how fast the trains run, or how clean the streets are, or how many robots it can build. It's measured by how it treats the ones who've been forgotten, how it holds space for those who can't keep up, how it welcomes those who've fallen behind. Japan is still figuring it out. The changes are slow, uneven, and not always enough, but they are happening. And in that, there is hope not just for Japan, but for all of us. Because the problems Japan faces today, they're not Japan's alone. They're the challenges of a world growing older, lonelier, faster than ever before. And the way we respond with compassion, creativity, and courage may be the most important thing we build in this century. Not a machine, not a skyscraper, but a society that remembers how to care. Japan is more than its skyline, more than the temples, the trains, the bullet speed efficiency. It's a living paradox, a nation that has mastered structure yet struggles with softness. But that's not a reason for judgment. It's an invitation to understand. Because what we've seen on this journey isn't just about Japan, it's about all of us, about how modern societies can rise so high and still leave some people behind, and about what it really means to build a country that's not just smart, but also kind. Behind every neon light, there's a shadow. Behind every system, there's a soul. And maybe the true strength of any nation lies not in how fast it moves forward, but in how gently it turns back to lift those who've fallen behind. If this story moved, you feel free to leave a comment and share your thoughts. And if you'd like to see more human stories from corners of the world rarely shown, consider subscribing to NVL Travel Documentary. Thanks for watching and for seeing what others might overlook.